Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has us looking at three primary sources about Hinduism and Hindu culture and Indian life. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson and to scroll down the correct section and get ready to answer the analysis questions that coincide with each primary doc. Please remember that you can replay any part of this presentation for detail, clarity, or repetition later on. Let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to look at the Hindu creation story, at least one rendition. Below are some excerpts from the creation myth given by the oldest Hindu text, the Rig Veda. Let's begin. 1,000 heads had Purusha, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet. He covered earth on every side and spread 10 fingers, breadth beyond. The Purusha is all that yet has been and all that is to be, the Lord of immortality, which waxes greater still by food. So mighty is his greatness, yea, greater than is Purusha. All creatures are 1/4 of him, 3/4 eternal life in heaven. With 3/4 Purusha went up, 1/4 of him again was here. Thence he strode out to every side over what eats not what eats. From him Viraj was born. Again Purusha from Viraj was born. And as soon as he was born, he spread eastward and westward o'er the earth. When gods prepared the sacrifice with Purusha as their offspring, its oil was spring, the holy gift was autumn, summer was the wood. They balmed as victim of the grass, and Purusha, born in earliest time, with him the deities and all the sadyas, the rishis, sacrificed. From that great general sacrifice the dripping fat was gathered up, and he formed the creatures of the air, and animals both wild and tame. From the great general sacrifice Richas and Sarumins were born. Therefrom the meters were produced. The Yajus had its birth from it. From it were horses born. From it all creatures with 2 rows of teeth. From it were generated cows. From it the goats and the sheep were born. When they divided Purusha, how many portions did they make? What do they call this his mouth? His arms. What do they call his thighs and feet? The Brahmin was his mouth. Of both his arms and Kshatriya made. His thighs became the Vaisya. From his feet the Sudra was produced. The moon was gendered from his mind, and from his eye the sun had birth. So that is the first primary doc here in our set. Please go ahead and answer the questions at this time, and you may resume to the next part of the presentation. Let's resume to the next part of the presentation, and let's focus on hymn 129. Hymn 129 from the Rig Veda, from about 1500 to 1200 BC. The Vedas is comprised of 4 collections of poetry that pay tribute to deities. Many hymns, like the one below, attempt to explain the world's origins. Here's a little bit of a different take about how the start of the world began. Then was not non-existent nor existent. There was no realm of air, no sky beyond it. What covered in and where, and what gave shelter? Was water there, unfathomed depth of water? Death was not then, nor was there aught immortal. No sign was there. The days and the nights divide. That one thing breathless, breathed by its own nature, apart from it was nothing whatsoever. Darkness there was, at first concealed. In darkness this all was indiscriminated chaos. All that existed then was void and formless. By the great power of warmth was born that unit. Thereafter rose desire in the beginning. Desire, the primal seed and germ of the spirit. Sages who searched with their hearts, thought discovered the existence, kinship, and non-existent. Transversely was their severing line that was then above it then, and what it below it. There were begetters, there were mighty forces, reaction here and energy up yonder. Who verily knows, and who can declare it, whence it was born, and whence it comes, this creation? The gods are later than this world's production. Who knows then whence it first came into being? So that is the second primary doc in this doc set. And when you're finished with that one, we will proceed to the final, The Legend of Rice, from an unknown date. This is a different take about one of the key things of India, and of course the rest of the Asian world, rice. Think carefully about what the moral of the story is and what they're trying to say here about rice. In the days when the earth was young and all things were better than they are now, when man and women were stronger and of greater beauty, and the fruit of the trees was larger and sweeter than that which we now eat, rice, the food of the people, was of larger grain. 1 grain was all a man could eat, and in those early days such too was the merit of the people. They never had to toil gathering the rice, for, when ripe, it fell from the stalks and rolled into the villages, even unto the granaries. And upon a year when the rice was larger and more plentiful than ever before, a widow said to the daughter, Our granaries are too small. We will put them down and build larger. When the old granaries were pulled down and new one not ready for use, the rice was ripe in the fields. Great haste was made, but the rice came rolling in where the work was going on. And the widow, angered, struck again and cried, "Could you not wait in the fields until we were ready? You should not bother us now when you are not wanted." So the rice broke into thousands of pieces and said, "From this time forth, we will wait in the fields until we are wanted." And from that time, the rice has been a small grain, and the people of the earth must gather it into the granary from the fields. So as you guys can see, there's a lot that you can take away from a cultural standpoint when you look at Hinduism as it relates to, of course, the culture of India and the greater rest of Hindu culture. Looking at these primary docs gives us further insight into how Indian people not only see the world back then, but also might shed light on how they see the world today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good luck with completing the rest of the lesson.